Hey guys, what's going on? It is Ash here. Today we're talking tournaments, and I'm going to give you 3 tips to make you much more successful, hopefully, in Clash Royale tournaments. By the way, just came in 2nd place in this tournament here. I'll go ahead and open this chest right now, and you're going to see it's a little lackluster what are in these chests. Now, mind you, I worked for 2 hours to get this chest, and I got 2nd place, and it's basically the equivalent of a silver chest. I did get 1 epic card, but you're not even guaranteed 1 epic card, just 20 cards there, so I'm not sure I'm a huge fan of the reward system right now as far as the tournament chests go. I hope they really up those a lot, because even though I'm not investing a ton of money into this, it was only a $5 tournament that I hosted, but you know, it is a lot of time, so hopefully I'm getting a little bit more than I would get out of 1 silver chest in the ladder and matchmaking. So by the way guys, before I get into the tips and the replays, if you're interested in joining tournaments, I host 1 or 2, at least 1 every single day, and I let you guys know the password on Twitter, so that's the best way to get into these matches. They're not public, they're rather, I use Twitter as a vehicle to share the password, so follow me on Twitter. It's at @clash_with_ash if you want to play in any of these tournaments, and good luck to you if you do. So I'm going to go ahead and put on some replays here. You can see this is the one that just finished up here, so let's go ahead and put on a replay. Let's just go to my tournament, my battle log, excuse me. I lost to the guy who won it all. You can see a lot of victories with this deck I'm using. This is my tournament deck right now. I'm a big fan of it, but we're going to show the replay against Carl, who ended up winning it all, so you get to see the deck that won it all in today's replay, as well as my deck who came in 2nd place. So this is really battle of the 1st and 2nd place decks while I go into the tournament tips and advice for you guys. So advice number 1 is play the long game. Now, in matchmaking and ladder play, out in the open, out in the wild, you only have 4 minutes maximum possible length for a match. Obviously, the 3-minute length plus that 1 minute of overtime. In tournament play and friendly challenge play, you have 6 minutes. You have that 3-minute overtime, and that changes a lot. Trust me, a lot of people switch over to more defensively minded decks in tournament play. A lot of smart players do that. So play the long game and think defense first, right? So if you do 200 damage to a tower in a tournament, that is actually more impactful than it is in the ladder out in the open, right? Because why is that more important? Because you can play defensively and keep chipping away at a tower, knowing that you have 6 minutes to get only 1 tower down if you can defend them from taking down one of your towers. So what I try to do is play for a 1 tower victory, unless obviously I'm just doing very well and or my opponent just doesn't have as much experience as I do. Then of course I'll be aggressive if I want to. But if I know I'm going against somebody really good, I always think defense first. Now, if you're playing one of your favorite decks and it doesn't have a defensive structure in it, I would recommend you consider adding either a Tesla, a cannon, or an Inferno tower. Some people even using a bomb tower with success, even in higher end tournaments. So consider adding one of these defensive structures. That just goes to show you that playing the game defensively minded in a 6-minute match is much more important. So consider doing that. You can see in this deck I have a cannon, and I'm able to stop almost any single hog push except for that one. And that hog zap in this push right here, that's basically what won him the game. Well, that and some bad timing at the very end on my part. I actually, little spoiler alert here, I get his left tower down to 50 hit points, and I just couldn't time my zap properly, and I ended up losing at the last second. But you'll see that in a second here and see what led up to that, and I make a few mistakes along the way, so Carl definitely deserved the win. But anyway, that was tip number 1. Play the long game, think defense first, and maybe add a defensive unit to your deck. Tip number 2 is, now these are a little bit outside the box tips, but I try to bring you guys outside the box stuff that you're not necessarily going to get on every channel out there. And this is a really strong tip for you guys right now. Whether you're playing in a 50-man tournament, an 80-man, or a 1,000-person tournament, a little bit past the halfway mark of the match, maybe about the last 1/3 of the entire tournament, no matter how long the length is. So if it's an hour tournament, in the last 20 minutes, what I do is grab a piece of pen and paper if I have one around, or even if I have to jot it in my phone in between matches, and what I do is I write down just one or two words after the top 5 or 10 people, or the 5 or 10 people around me in the standings. That's if I'm doing well, obviously. If you're at the bottom of the tournament, this tip isn't going to help you out a ton, but the next tip might help you out a little bit. But basically what I do is, maybe I'm in the top 20, maybe I'm in the top 30, depending on how large the tournament is. Anybody around my trophy area, or the number of tournament trophies I have, I'll quickly jot down their name, and then I'll put minor. Royal Giant, Power Deck, Dual Prince deck, Goblin Barrel deck, Giant, Balloon deck. Whatever they're playing, I jot that next to their name, and most people don't switch decks in the tournament. Most people go into a tournament with decks that they're comfortable with, so that's like a little cheat sheet that can really come in handy, especially if it's an expensive tournament and you've invested a lot of time and maybe even money into the tournament. You want to give yourself every chance to win possible. So think about jotting down, scouting your opponents, and that way when you start playing somebody, immediately you'll be at a huge advantage. You'll probably know what cards they're about to play, and you'll know what's coming. So that's a really good tip for you guys. And the third tip also has to do with a little bit of mind games, a little bit of psychology, kind of like the second tip. And that's something that I do early on in these matches, right? So about the first third of these tournaments, or maybe the first half of the tournament, I'll play a Royal Giant deck, which isn't my go-to deck in tournaments, but I want to play something and play enough people with it where they start to expect this deck when they find me. And then I'll switch over to a deck that I feel a little bit stronger at, which is a minor cycle deck like this, and I feel like it's better defensively, a little bit better defensively than my Royal Giant deck is too. So you don't have to use the same exact plan that I do, but try to find two decks that you're comfortable with and take turns switching and swapping them throughout the tournament. It doesn't have to be every other match, but just keep your opponents guessing. If people see what you're playing and you're playing the same exact thing every single match, eventually someone's going to be able to predict you and they're going to have a strong leg up on you, but where you want to have the strong leg up on them. So those are going to be the 3 tips, guys, to help you win tournaments more often. The game is a little bit different than it is in normal matchmaking, what most of you guys are used to, so hopefully you guys can help adjust thanks to videos like this. And just to review, number 1 is the long game. Think the long game, think defense first. Go ahead and see what they have in their deck. Scouting is very important. You'll get into a routine where you'll know the best way to counter their pushes, and what you want to do is always make sure you have your best counter up. So for example, if they're playing a Royal Giant deck and you're playing Ice Wizard, or you have a cannon that you're trying to distract, or you have a mini P.E.K.K.A. or Barbarians, whatever that counter is, you don't want to really try to use, especially in a 6-minute match, you don't want to use those Barbarians offensively unless it's a counter push more often than not. Obviously, every situation is a little bit different, but make sure you keep those key defensive cards always at hand, because all it takes is 1 or 2 lapses where you didn't have your defensive card up and ready, or you used it at the wrong time, and then they can get that advantage that will be decisive enough to really come through for them and win the tournament, or at least beat you out in that match. So that's going to be it for the tips today, but I do want to end talking a little bit about tournaments as a whole. Are you guys really enjoying them as much as I am? I gotta really reiterate quickly that I am a little bit disappointed in the prize pool. I have voiced my opinion to Supercell on that, and they've kind of acknowledged that maybe it is a little bit weak, a little bit small, and I think it's one of those mentalities that it's best to start small, right? And then if people go ahead and complain, you can give them a little bit more, but if you start huge and then you take away from people, well, everybody knows psychology. You don't want to take away, you always want to give. So I think that's probably the mindset. I know that's how the Clash of Clans team works as well. So you can see here, just again, it's a long match and we're into overtime. I go into overtime almost every single one of my matches when the opponent is really skilled, when they know what they're doing, when they're thinking defensively first. I always am going to anticipate going into overtime, and that's definitely the case here. You don't want to rush things. Just because it's in overtime, you shouldn't be playing any more aggressively than you were beforehand. So just keep that in mind. Overtime is not as peril as it is in normal ladder play and matchmaking. So guys, thank you so much for watching this video, taking a little bit of time out of your day to hang out with me. I really appreciate it, guys, and as always, take care.